10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, welcome to episode 13 of Your Brain on God.
What's up, Boggies?
In this episode, we are wrapping up our fear series by talking about courage. We're going to have a conversation about why fear is not something we need to be living from, but embracing courage in the midst of fear is the way to go.
Is the way to go.
It's the way to go. So listen in. It's a good episode. We hope this encourages you to be courageous.
Ooh, that was good, Darryl. Enjoy the episode. Well, what's going on? YBOG, all of our beautiful boggies out there.
Boggies.
Boggies.
Hello.
My little Hoggy boggies. Haagen-Dazs boggies.
Haagen-Dazs Boggies.
My chocolate boggies out there.
For whoever is eating Haagen-Dazs right now.
Honestly, just in time for Easter, I just wanted to say that we have new chocolate boggies. And they're going to... That sounds like some weird cannibalism thing.
Chocolate Boggies?
Chocolate boggies.
That sounds like it could be a thing.
Yeah, chocolate boggies, like they're little chocolate frogs that you find in the...
Yeah, chocolate frogs. Boggies.
You want to know what my favorite chocolate was growing up?
What?
As a kid? Chocolate oranges.
Chocolate oranges.
You ever have chocolate oranges? They're not actually oranges.
Is that like...
It's like orange
Jaffas?
chocolate. What?
Jaffas? Jaffas?
What
I don't know. Is that an
about?
Australian thing? Maybe that
Jaffas.
Yeah, that was a orange chocolate candy in Australia.
Oh, really? I don't know.
So.
My dad would get these candies, and they were shaped like oranges. You would peel down the whole thing, and they'd slices of chocolate orange candy, and they were ridiculously good.
Have you had orange Coke?
What? For real?
Yeah.
Is that from one of those machines that has like a million different flavors of Coke?
I don't know. I had it first in Australia. Again, they're big chocolate orange fans out there. Well, some people. But there was a chocolate Coke that came out. It was weird.
Wait, an orange
But it was
Coke or a
interesting.
chocolate Coke?
Sorry. A chocolate Coke would be weird. It was an orange Coke. It was Coca-Cola orange flavored.
You're saying a chocolate Coke would be weird, but an orange Coke is not weird? Is that what you're saying?
You know they have like vanilla Coke?
Mm-hmm.
I guess vanilla Coke. Why don't they have a chocolate Coke? I've never seen a chocolate Coke.
Yeah. Or like a Neapolitan Coke.
Neapolitan Coke might be too much. It would taste like a float.
Yeah, which would be awesome. Root beer floats. I feel like a Coke float would be dope.
Yeah. Coke float. Well, that's a thing, but in a bottle? Is that vanilla Coke?
Wait, what? Yeah, vanilla Coke is like it's like a Coke float. It's like having vanilla ice cream in there, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember ever thinking that. But cream soda, I remember having, whenever I have root beer and root beer float, it reminds me of cream soda, which makes sense.
Dude, can we talk about cream soda for a second?
Yeah.
Cream soda is absolutely delicious.
It's good.
And that's all I really have to say about it.
You know what? I think it used to be my favorite soda, but I was too afraid to admit it.
What?
I loved root beer. Okay? I just really loved root beer.
Yeah.
And then I discovered cream soda, and I remember thinking, whoa, this is really good. But I felt like I needed to keep liking root beer.
You know what, guys? Sometimes you fall into patterns. You feel like you have to continue liking something, and if you like something different, then it's like an end. It's almost like an identity thing. It's like, no, I'm the guy that likes root beer.
Yeah, that was me. I was the root beer guy. I had root beer candies, loved root beer candies. They were my favorite.
Until cream soda came out.
No, I did love root beer candies. I still do. And I loved root beer. I still do. But I remember having cream soda and thinking, is this better than root beer? And thinking, I can't think that. I'm a root beer guy.
It's like an existential crisis.
Yeah, it was weird. It's like, you know, we have these things that we like and we start attaching our identities to them. And that's what happened to me with root beer.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I think I can't think of any specific things, but there's definitely been things in my life that I slowly but surely, I just stopped doing them. Or I just stopped liking doing them. And it was like almost like this, it was this loss, you know, of like, man, I was the Hello Kitty kid. Just kidding. I'm just kidding, you know. But I was really into that, and I'm not really into that anymore. And that's weird that I'm not into that. But it's like everyone knew me as the root beer kid,
right? And that's the thing, when everybody knows you as that thing, it's like suddenly we put ourselves in a box,
right?
That is in a root beer box.
You were in a root beer box, man. That is the interesting thing, is that you, even with good things in your life, you can allow what people like about you to become a box that you have to stay in, you know? So it's like, if you're always I don't know, even that happens to a lot of kids, you know what I mean? It's like the clown, you know what I mean? Like who's like the class clown or something like that. And then people are like, you're so funny, that's amazing. And then immediately you feel like this pressure to keep...
be funny.
I need to be funny and amazing, and then based on what they say to you, you kind of stay in that box, and then feel like you have to live up to that thing.
Yeah, it's like we get this like an identity given to us, and we're excited about it. Like, oh, they recognize me as this. Like the feeling of being seen as something.
Right. I'm
seen as this. What if I'm not that anymore? Then I'm not going to be seen.
Right.
Wow.
And so we live into that thing.
That might have been me a lot.
Yeah, I think I did that a lot. I almost like didn't intense. Like it's like where you stop being funny, or you stop being seen by people so that you don't get put in certain boxes.
Right. And I think I did I went to that. I reverted to avoiding being seen as something, except for then I was like the quiet person.
right. So you're always seen as something.
Then I was known as the quiet person, you know, and then I held on to that for a long time.
Right.
You know, then people didn't expect me to say much. Didn't expect much of me, and it felt safe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about certain, I guess skating was one of those things for me. You know, like I was always a skater kid, or like I had certain even personalities that I did as like jokes that people like always wanted me to do, and it was so annoying.
Would you want to show us?
No, I don't want to share. That was BC days.
I don't think I knew any of your personalities. I only know this personality.
No, well, I mean, like, some like weird, I would do like weird voices and stuff like that. I basically, so I had this teacher in high school, and his name was Mr. Estrada. Okay, Mr. Estrada, if you're watching this, I love you, bro. But he would always do this thing, and he was the coolest teacher ever. He would always do this thing when you get like an answer right. He would go, yeah. So he would always like walk around the classroom, and like he would look at your work that you were doing, and then if you were like getting it right, he would like literally be right behind you, and you would just hear yeah, and he would do this thing. He would do this thing where his pinky would go out like that, and he would go yeah, buddy, yeah, like that, and then he would always say,
that's affirming.
It is really affirming, yeah. And he would always say, "You're the man with the hammer, yeah." Like I was getting stuff done. So what happened is I just started to love this guy so much that I created an entire almost like superhero out of Mr. Estrada, and his voice was a blast that would like break eardrums basically.
Wow.
Yeah, and he would just scream, "Yeah!" And he would So I created entire dynamics around my Spanish teacher, Mr. Estrada.
Estrada.
Yeah.
Sounds like
he was great.
Superhero.
Yeah, but he's from Nicaragua. And you like, yeah. He was awesome. He was super cool.
Wow.
So but then that became a thing that I got locked into or whatever. And my friends would be like, "Oh, do the Mr. Estrada thing." And I was like, "Gosh, dude." Yeah. I was like, again, I'm all, "Yeah, buddy. Yeah."
Wow.
But yeah, people can sometimes they can lock you into certain things, or at least you feel pressure. I mean, if you're actually free from people, it doesn't really matter. Even if people put you on the spot, it's like, okay, I'll do it, but I'm not like looking. But I was very insecure in high school. So like people asked me to do stuff on the spot, especially if it was in front of people. It was always the fear of like, it's not going to be good enough if I do it in front of you now. Like my character is not going to be funny. It's better if I do it naturally, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Because I think we want to be seen naturally, not have to put on a performance for it. But I've always been like the goofball. So people would ask me to do that stuff all the time, you know? Just like joke around.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then you found yourself wearing those shoes all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Even when you didn't want to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's crazy. But you got to have the courage. Oh, segue.
Whoa, courage.
What?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. It might be the topic of our episode because all of our boggies out there, we are in the final countdown. We are in the final episode of our Fear series. which is almost a sad. It's almost a sad goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one tear streaming down my face because we're not going to be doing fear anymore.
No, we're done with fear.
We're done with fear.
After today.
We are done with fear after today. And so we wanted to jump on here and we wanted to talk about not necessarily the antidote to fear, but something that helps us combat fear, I would say.
Yeah.
And step in to more full living, which is courage or bravery. But more specifically, I mean, they're synonyms.
Yeah, they're very similar.
When I think of courage, I'm reminded of Courage the Cowardly Dog. You ever watch that show?
From, what was it from again?
Cartoon Network?
Yeah.
Or Boomerang? No, it's Cartoon Network.
Cartoon Network.
Courage the Cowardly Dog. That was the creepiest show I have ever seen.
He was purple or pink, right?
Yeah,
Pink
he was like this weird purple dog. And
I don't remember what Courage the Cowardly Dog was like.
He was always very scared. He was the opposite of courage.
Of courageous.
Which is interesting because his name was Courage, but he was very afraid. Yeah. And he lived with these creepy grandparents. He had like Yes.
I don't remember what they look like, but I remember what it feels like to see them.
They were absolutely crazy. I think this show actually did psychological damage to me as a kid.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the dog literally was living in fear all the time. And all this weird stuff was always happening. Like his grandparents were getting possessed and aliens were coming down. Like it was a creepy show.
Dang.
Yeah. Watch that when you're 7 and like everything's going crazy and there's like twisters and they live out in the middle of nowhere in like a house all by itself in the desert.
I don't remember all this stuff.
You don't remember?
I remember seeing the show, but I don't remember all the things that happened.
They're like farmers or something. They have a rickety old wooden house. This is a kid's show, guys. A kid's show, okay? Courage the Cowardly Dog. He's a purple dog. He's got like a black spot, I think, or whatever.
Yeah,
and he's always terrified. And then he just has grandparents that are the creepiest. They're always in rocking chairs, and sometimes they have no eyes and stuff like that, or their eyes go
it's
blank.
Like all white, right?
Yeah.
Their eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, creepy.
Yeah, their eyes get all white. It's like the creepiest show ever. And they put this out for kids. It's like, no wonder I have relational issues. No wonder I have problems with fear, you know?
Your relational issues because of Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I'm just saying, man. It was scary. But yeah, we're going to be talking about courage today. Talking about how we can actually step into courage, how we can actually embrace fear and step into a more full experience of life, which we talked about a little bit, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it.
Yeah, more specifically about courage, because I think we probably touched on courageous things in the other episodes. Mm-hmm. You know, when we talked about anxiety or shame, even insecurity, I think some things that we've mentioned, maybe more towards the end, were things that would require courage.
Right.
You know, to step into the fear. Fear, I think when talking about courage, it's good to have the framework of fear in a way that fear stops us, right? To understand fear as a thing that often stops us from doing things.
Right.
Or it encourages us to do certain behaviors, right? As well.
It's a motivator.
It's a motivator. Mm-hmm. Fear motivates us to do or not do something. Right? And that fear can often run a lot of decisions of our lives. Right? The little things, the big things, the different things that we're afraid of in the day-to-day affect the way that we're going to live our life, the decisions we're going to make, the kind of person we're going to be. And I think courage comes as a redefining the purpose of fear. Like the fear is meant to keep us safe, right? Mm-hmm. Fear, we talked about in the first episode of the series, that fear is designed to protect us, right? It's meant to help us survive, help us to continue to go on. Mm-hmm. But it often ends up handicapping us or stopping us from doing the things that we really want to do because we are afraid of something or worried something bad is going to happen. And courage is taking the fear, not living from the fear, not allowing the fear to be the thing that determines the way we are going to respond. Right. So just because we are afraid doesn't mean that it is a bad thing. Right. Yeah. I think courage helps us see that and step into the thing we're afraid of.
Totally.
in order to walk towards the thing that we want, or to make a decision that moves us closer to the thing we want, or the person that we want to be.
Right. So having courage is not having the absence of fear,
No.
but it's choosing what you want to choose and what you think is right in the midst of fear.
In the midst of fear, not allowing the fear to be the thing that controls us.
Exactly.
But even though we have fear, courage is what shows up in the midst of that in order for us to move in the direction we want to move.
Right. Yeah, because we have a weird relationship with fear, you know, because it is such a thing that we've used as a protection system for us.
Yeah.
Most often the truth that we get, the reason that we do or not do, like you said, certain things is because of fear. And so courage is almost making decisions saying, fear, you're not going to, I don't need you to help me make these decisions. Right.
Yeah,
I don't need you to, I feel like in like a bad relationship, you know, you might have like a girl who's in like a bad relationship with a toxic dude or whatever. Right. But she won't get out of the relationship because she feels like she needs that guy. Like she won't be supported. She won't be okay if she actually leaves him. Right. So she determines to stay in an abusive relationship or stay in like a toxic relationship because it provides at least something. There's someone there. It's protective. You know what I mean? In some way, at least she's not going to be alone. It keeps her from some of those other things. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way that we operate sometimes with fear is we stay in this like toxic relationship, allowing it to kind of control us because we're afraid that if we let go of fear, that it's like, well, fear is what's protecting me. So what's, you know what I mean?
Fear is the reason I'm safe.
Exactly.
I'm staying safe because I'm afraid.
Exactly. And so I think courage allows us in the midst of fear to say, you know what? You don't determine the truth for my life. You know, I want to step out of that. I'm going to make a decision that is contrary to fear, you know, which I think is really important. We just read a book this last week called, we just,
Who Moved My Cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese? Yeah. And it's all about change. And it's like, it's this really cool story. I don't know who it's by, but it's got these 4 different characters. 2 of those characters are mice named,
Scurry and Sniff.
Scurry and Sniff, and then 2 of the characters are little people, or like they're
About
just
the same size as mice.
But they're humans, and their names are Hem and Haw. And it's basically this whole story about like them in this maze where they're trying to get this cheese, right? And the mice, it points this out that the mice have much more simpler brains than the humans have. Right?
Yeah.
So the mice, they find the cheese, and like they, you know, it has this, you know, whole part to it.
It's just real quick to paint the picture of the purpose of the book. It's about this. So the mice go in this labyrinth and they find the cheese together, right? Sniff and Scurry. And they find the cheese, you know, and they live there. There's a huge block of cheese inside of this cheese station C or whatever.
Cheese station C, yeah.
And then Hem and Haw also find their way through the labyrinth and make their way to the cheese. And so the cheese is there. Everybody's loving the cheese. And they're there for a period of time. And eventually the cheese is gone. They wake up one morning, there's no cheese.
Right.
And so Hem and Haw are like, who moved my cheese?
Right.
And Sniff and Scurry, the mice, once they realized the cheese was gone, they just went out looking for new cheese. Right. So they went back into the labyrinth where it was uncertain, where it was unsafe, where unclear, where they didn't know. And they went to go find the new cheese. Hem and Haw decided to stay in place.
Right.
And wait for something to happen.
Right.
And then it was Haw eventually wanted to go back out into the labyrinth.
Right.
After a long time of lighting the fear state of leaving. So he was afraid of leaving because he didn't know what was going to happen. What if he runs out of cheese? What if he dies out in the labyrinth?
Right.
So maybe he should just stay put.
And the point of the story is basically, well, not to ruin it for you. If you want to read it, you can still. But basically, that humans, we have, you know, sometimes complex brains like Hem and Haw are staying in this cheese station with no cheese in it, expecting that they're going to have their old cheese, and they're not willing to adapt and change and go out back into the uncertain, back into the unknown to go find something different that's going to actually work. Because not every season is the same in life.
Right.
And so sometimes we stay in the same seasons or the same mindsets, or we stay trying to do the same things that aren't producing producing the cheese in our lives, but we rely on those things so much that we're not willing to get back out there,
to go out and figure out where's the new cheese,
go into the maze of life and find the cheese of life. So Ha, and his name is Ha because he realizes that he should laugh at himself and take himself more lightly.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Goes on this journey because his name is Hem because he hems himself in
and he stays
to this one way, and he stays, and he doesn't want to leave because he's scared of the unknown, and he wants the old cheese. He's not willing to go find the other cheese. So Ha goes on this journey to go find more cheese where the other mice are or whatever. And throughout it, he's like writing little cheese mantras on the walls, like things that he's learning on his journey, in this uncertain journey through this maze to find new cheese. And one of the things that he wrote on the wall, which totally impacted me, totally changed it. He says, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" You know, and that just totally impacted me because obviously I still struggle with fear sometimes, and to even think to myself, man, what if I actually thought that way, where it was like I was afraid of something, and courage would say, what would the choice be if I wasn't afraid?
Right.
Even in the midst of
and
fear.
bring clarity
to
what you really think is important.
Right, because we make decisions most often out of fear, right? So courage would actually, having a mindset, even in the midst of fear, to be like, well, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And then making that decision. Right? So then stepping out of that fear into the unknown, into that thing, it's like, I would do this if I wasn't afraid, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that is crazy difficult.
Yeah. And even in the story, that was one of the first questions that he asked himself that propelled him to go out and to keep venturing for the new cheese. And it's the fear that stops us, but the courage allows us to move forward despite being afraid.
Right.
Regardless of what the situation is. I think I mentioned this on the last episode, but most of my life I lived in a lot of insecurity, and that often held me back from doing a whole lot of things into my early 20s. And it wasn't until somebody saw me do something and told me that I'm a man of courage that I even considered myself to do anything courageous ever.
Right.
I never saw myself as somebody courageous or saw myself as someone who would go and do something that I was scared to do because my life experience was, I'm afraid to do that, so I'm not going to do it. Right. I was always allowing my insecurities and my fears to really control and dictate the actions that I took. Right. So much so where I would be so filled with like anxiety where I felt like I really needed to do something, but I didn't do it. Right. Because I was afraid. I was allowing the fear to be the thing that determined the decision I made.
It keeps you from being who you want to be.
Yeah. Even though the fear was a legitimate, there could be legitimate reasons to be afraid, right? Right. Legitimately could, damage my reputation or the way people saw me, or I could get hurt or damaged or whatever. But it was so paralyzing because I didn't have the courage to do something. And I didn't take the courage to act upon it. I didn't see myself as somebody who was courageous. And this person who's one of my leaders in college just randomly came up to me and said, "You're a man of courage." And I was like, what? What are you talking about?
That's just like God.
Right. Yeah. I know. Oh, mighty man of valor.
Yeah. That's what he does to
Gideon. And it just started a question in my mind. Well, at first I didn't even I thought, whatever. Right. Yeah, the first time he said it, it didn't mean much to me because I thought that's not true. And I know my experience. I know the kind of decisions I make. And I would not say that I do anything courageous. Right. And he said it again like a few weeks later. Or I don't know, maybe a couple months later. But he saw me again in the hallways and he was like, "Hey, Darryl, you're a man of courage." Randomly, right? We're just passing each other in the halls. And then I started thinking, am I a man of courage? Do I do courageous things? What do I do that's courageous? And from that point, I started asking myself, where are the times that I have been courageous? Right? What are the things that I have done that can be courageous, that might have been courageous? And also, where is courage needed in my life? Right. I started asking myself, where can I be more courageous? Right. And I started actually seeing opportunities to be courageous where I didn't see those as opportunities to be courageous before. I just saw them as opportunities to cower,
Right.
To close down, to not say anything, not raise my hand, not speak up, not do the thing.
That's even a courageous thing to ask, though, what you just did.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's courageous to ask, what areas am I not courageous in? Right? Because even that could tell you something about you not being courageous and could make you feel depressed because you never step out.
Right. Because I'm not a courageous person.
Right.
But it was crazy because whenever he said that, I was able to I tried to see it in myself.
Right.
When before I didn't try to see it in myself. And it's not like I changed, I wasn't suddenly a different person.
Right.
But my perspective of myself started to change.
Right.
I think I said this last time, but I thought I was just shy and quiet, right? But really, I was just scared.
Right. Yeah.
I was just scared. And so I avoided a lot of situations that I wanted to be in. But because I was afraid that I might mess up or something might happen that is not what I want to happen.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I decided that year in college to make it a year of courage, where I wasn't going to allow fear to be a reason I didn't do something.
Right.
I was going to do it scared.
Right. That's actually exactly what I felt like for 2020, the word, like, how people kind of get words from the Lord, in the beginning of the year or ask God, God, what do you want for me this year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or what do you want to develop in me? And in 2019, the word was like fearless, what I mean? Like stepping into like fearlessness. I wanted to get rid of fear. But in 2020, it was courage. And because I think what the Lord did is he started to shift my perspective from trying to be fearless to going after courage, right?
Yeah.
And to not trying to get rid of or push out all of the feelings of fear, but instead being courage in the midst of fear.
Yeah.
Because they hold you back from so many things, Yeah. And there's that saying that's like, fear is false evidence appearing real, and I maybe kind of agree with that. I mean, I think that fear causes us to see a lot of false evidence, right? But some of those things you actually did cower out. You know what I mean? Like inside of you, to some degree, there was an actions of fear, right? Actions of cowardice, those things. And so it's not just like trying to say all of those things are fake and those aren't, but that is not what also you're defined by, right? And that I think that's what that guy was doing in you. It's like, yeah, you might have like a lot of actions of cowardice, but there's courage inside of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that even proves it. Like I said earlier, your even ability to say, I want to step into courage is courageous.
Yeah.
Right?
It takes courage to even start that journey.
Yeah. To start a journey of courage, because a journey of courage is going to take courage, right?
Yeah.
So even in your own heart saying, man, I don't want to live as a coward. I don't want to cower away from people. I don't want to be insecure. I don't want to care about what other people think. I want to step into something new. I want to step into vibrancy of life. That takes courage. You know what I mean? Sometimes we become so used to our own anxiety and our insecurities and our fears and all of these things that those things become so real to us. They identify us. And then we're like, well, that's just how the way it is. Right?
Right. Just who I am.
Right. It's just who I am, because cowardice says that can just be who I am. So I don't have to live up to a certain measure, right? I don't have to do any more, because if I'm just a coward, it doesn't matter.
Right.
I've already defined myself.
Define myself as that. Exactly.
Right. I don't have to push myself if I'm already. One of my students said yesterday, we were doing a Bible study yesterday, and I absolutely love, people say this like next generation, it's like they're most like absent or whatever, but there are great kids. Like I'm just so excited about them. But one of our senior girls, Nicole, we did this whole thing with masks this past weekend about like getting rid, not COVID masks, but getting rid of masks that we put on, like these insecurities that we put on, this show for other people so that we could be authentic people. And God told her insecurity, right? And she's like, yeah, God, I know I'm insecure. And she said that he corrected her and said, no, you hide behind the mask of insecurity. And she was like, oh, because what she was saying to me that is, if I just say that I'm insecure, right, I never have to break out of that insecurity, and I always have a justification for not being brave or courageous in certain situations, right? So she's a worship leader, and so she can say, she always can point to her insecurity as the reason for why she messed up or didn't take that moment or didn't do an act of courage or didn't sing out as strong or whatever. She can always use that as a justifier for where she's at, right?
Yeah.
And so that takes courage to say, you know what? I'm not an insecure person. I don't want to be an insecure person. I want to step out of that.
Yeah.
That initial, right, even thought, it shows that there's courage inside of you, whether or not it's dormant or not. Right? A volcano is still powerful whether or not it's dormant or not. That stuff's still in it. It just has to explode, right? So that was good. You should write that down.
Yeah, I think courage is always inside of us.
Right.
We always have the potential to be courage. And specifically when there is fear involved.
Right, yeah.
Because when we're not afraid, there is no need for courage. Mm-hmm. Right? If there's nothing for us to be afraid of or no potential harm or loss or risk, or any kind of like damage, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, there really is not a need to be courageous.
Right.
But the presence of fear is the qualifier to be courageous.
Yeah.
If you're afraid, you're qualified to be courageous.
Whoa. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. And often that's so good because oftentimes we use fear as a disqualifier for things.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I can't do that because I'm afraid. Like that is actually, you being afraid is the very qualifier for you to say, you know what, I'm going to step out of that fear and I'm actually going to step into courage.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That actually, that is the catalyst for it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, and that shift in my understanding of fear and the way that I saw fear, the way that I see fear, has been a huge impact in my life. And that doesn't mean that fear doesn't ever stop me, because it does sometimes still. But I'm a lot more intentional now whenever I'm afraid to ask myself, am I only avoiding this because I'm afraid?
Right.
And if that's the only reason I'm avoiding something, then I decide to move into it.
Right.
Right. I'm going to push against it.
What would you do if you weren't afraid?
Yeah, because I'm not going to let fear be a reason that I don't do something.
Right.
And that's made a huge difference in a lot of decisions I made over the years. I mean, I mentioned I made it a year of courage, when I was in college. In that 1 year, I did very intentionally do things that are like outside of my comfort zone that might not have been big deals to people, right? So things like speaking up in class or raising my hand when the teacher would ask a question. I would often just not raise my hand because I thought, well, I probably don't know the answer, or somebody else will say the answer.
Right.
And I would just sit there and I would just wait for someone to give the answer, or if people just kept getting it wrong, the teacher would give the answer. And it terrified me, the idea of just being in front of people and talking. Right. And so I started raising my hand. I was like, I need to be the first person to raise my hand when the teacher asks a question. Right. And because I made that commitment to myself, I'm not going to let fear be a reason I don't do something. I started raising my hand earlier in the classes. And then that was practicing courage. Right. And I started getting a little bit more comfortable doing those things I was scared of. I would if the teacher needed a volunteer for something, I would volunteer. I would raise my hand to be a volunteer, go in front of the class and do whatever. Right. I had the opportunity to speak at the men's ministry as well that year, towards the end of the year. And that's something I would have completely avoided at every cost. Right. I would have come up with every excuse in the book. Right. But the only reason I didn't want to do it was because I was afraid. Right. And so I did it. And so I had the opportunity. I said yes. I just trusted that if they wanted me to do it, then I need to trust their decision, and I'll bring my best. Right. And I think that's valid too, what you're saying, because courage is built in small increments. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be practice. It doesn't have to be practice in like this grand. You don't have to go slay the dragon tomorrow. Right. Mm-hmm. You don't have to step into like your wildest dreams, necessarily, unless you want to, just you can quit. Yeah, you can quit your job right now. You know what I mean? And like go follow your dream to be an actor or something like that. Although I would say quitting your job is the best thing I've ever done. Yeah. Not quitting your job. Quitting my job was the best thing when I worked at Starbucks and actually started DJing. Dude, quitting. If you're trying to quit your job and you're stuck a dead end on a job, don't complain about a job that you can change. That's my one rule. That's good. That's really good. Yeah. But courage, it comes in these incremental things, right? So something that, I started doing because, my counselor started, asking me to do it, is taking cold showers in the morning, right? Mm-hmm. Or like I would at least take a hot shower and then I would turn it down slowly, until it got kind of like really like pipes cold, right? So it would get pipes cold and then I would be in the shower like,
right. But it was almost like this little act of courage to start me out in the morning, right?
Right, because you're afraid of the cold.
Exactly. It wasn't about just taking a cold shower or something like that. It was about actually doing something that is difficult to do and overcoming it, right? As simple as turning the shower cold at the end of your shower and letting that light you up and like being uncomfortable, right? Starting the day out with a little...
You're stepping into discomfort. Sorry.
Exactly. Stepping out into a little bit of uncomfortability. Yeah. And then those little things over time, right? They'll allow you to slay the dragon. Right? Because you start making these little acts of courage, like raising your hand in class or speaking up when you think something's right and you think you should speak into something, or taking a cold shower in the morning, or going and, flirting with that girl you like, or that, what I mean? Like those little acts of courage, right? All amount, and they start to give you more and more confidence that you can do bigger things, right? Because if you're always living out of fear, fear perpetuates fear, right? So if you make little decisions out of fear, you're going to continue making those decisions out of fear, because those things, fear has compound interest. So it's like the more that you invest into fear, right, that probably is going to get bigger and bigger until you start making bigger decisions out of fear, right? But so does courage. Yeah, courage has that compound interest too. So you start shifting your mindset from fear onto, what can I do that's courageous today, rather than just trying to stay away from fear, right? What can I do, even a little thing that's courageous today? I could go love my wife well and have like a conversation with her, I could play with my kids, you know what I mean? Which is like, I'm really tired, but courage maybe would say, I'm going to go play with my kids. Or I could sit with some of the feelings that I'm feeling right now. I don't really want to deal with these feelings. I want to numb, but I'm going to sit with them. That's going to be a little act of courage I could take. Like I said, take the cold shower, or I could go on a run. I know that I'm scared or insecure about or go to the gym. I'm like, those little acts of courage.
Those little things.
Yeah. Those things go a long way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I eventually was, at one point I was asked to, so I was going to college. I was always involved at serving at this big conference, like tens of thousands of people. And I was always serving in the background, doing something that I love to do. But one year, so first, every year in the mornings, they would have some like little goofy, fun, like morning show that they would do in the middle of like the arena. And they were always some kind of like romance thing, like some goofy, joking romance thing where they like try to set up some like a girl that people know with like a bunch of guy contestants.
Right.
And the goal was always to embarrass the guys.
Right.
They'd have guys that go up there. Sometimes they'd tell them to do certain things. It was like pre-written, but it was super embarrassing. Everybody's just watching and laughing. And it's like, this guy's just there being like made fun of. And it was all like for fun, and everybody like, had fun doing it. But one year I was asked to do that. And I was like, everything. I was on the phone when they called me, and I was like pacing around. I was like, I don't want to do this. But I didn't have any other reason. I asked myself that question.
Right.
Is it just because I'm afraid?
Right.
I had no other reason for me to say no, other than I was just scared.
Right.
And so I said, I was like, are you sure you want me to do it? I'm not good at improv. I was like, it's not one of my strengths. But like, yeah, no, we think you'd be great. We really would want you to do it. I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Right.
And so I did it. And it was, in the beginning, I was like so nervous, so uncomfortable when like, it was, and it lasted multiple days because people got eliminated. But if you stayed on, you kept going. And so I didn't get eliminated.
Did you actually end up dating the girl?
No. It was all like for fun. They like joke. Yeah. There's like somebody who was set up to be the winner. So we were doing it and like, going on every morning. It was like just dumb, embarrassing things. And I remember being so uncomfortable the first time, but after the first day, I was okay. I stopped caring so much about what I was going to look like or what people were going to think or
what kind of things did you
do. We would go up there and they had us like introduce ourselves first, and we'd like have to say, I don't remember what exactly we'd answer some questions. The second day they like gave us all backpacks. It's like supposed to be the bags that we came to the conference with, and they just pull random stuff out that like was dumb, and like I don't know, they'd find jokes to make.
Right.
I was getting set up to be one of the top contenders, so they put something good in there like chocolate or roses or something, right?
Right.
So I went to the last day, and I actually ended up winning the thing.
No
I
way.
wasn't supposed to win.
You weren't supposed to?
No. It was weird. It was so like there was a team that's working with you to like, do stuff, and so they're like, well, what can you do for the big thing? You know, because you have to like. There was a preset thing where like they were both vocalists, the guy and the girl. They were gonna do some big like vocal thing, which was great. And I could dance, so I did some dance thing, and like I danced with her, like did a waltz, like a Beauty and the Beast thing, around like the whole arena area. But I don't know, it was elaborate. There was like a team involved with helping make it happen.
Right.
But because of I don't know why, it was the other person was meant to win, and then she ended up picking me because of how elaborate it was or whatever. And they put on the screens, like words went up on the screen like pick Darryl or something because of I volunteered with the team in the back. Anyways, whatever. But it was this huge thing. I ended up getting way more attention than I wanted or ever needed. And if I were to think about myself before I decided to start practicing being courageous, there was no way I would have ever said yes to do something like that.
Right.
And even if I did, I would have been so terrified the whole time I was up there.
Right.
But because I had been practicing courage and being comfortable doing things afraid, you know, doing something scared, like I'm scared, but I'm going to do it scared.
Right.
I was okay. I was able to stop living in the anxiety of it and just do it. Right. And it is those little incremental things that help build up our courage. When we practice courage, we become more courageous.
Right.
It becomes more readily accessible to us. Right. It's like we always have courage with us, but we forget to use it. And the more we use it, the more we remember, oh no, I have this. You know, like I got this courage here. I'm going to pull this out.
Right.
I can handle this situation.
Yeah.
And it's like it starts becoming our first reaction rather than trying to backpedal first and trying to get our way out of it. And, you know, but when we practice using courage, it becomes more natural to us.
Right.
To do something even though we're afraid of doing it.
Right.
Where fear is no longer the thing that determines the decisions we're going to make.
Right.
But we allow courage to be that thing.
Right. And that brings like that brings power back into you, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's really what our human spirits were like made for, you know? Like, or at least feels like to experience like adversity, or to experience like something that could totally mess us up, to experience pain, and then in the midst of it to be like, nah, like I'm going after it, you know? Right. Like there's something that comes alive in us. And that's why we're talking about courage, is because there's this fullness to courage, right?
Yeah.
It's not the bypass of fear in life. Right. And we can try and do that. And I think there are things that we stop being afraid of, and that's awesome. But I feel like there's nothing that brings me alive more, makes me feel like a lion, than being with hyenas all around me and taking them out, you know, like there's this healthy, you know, I would say for us guys, this healthy masculinity even, you know what I mean, that comes out when you do get up there, you know what I mean? And you are making things happen, and you are doing things that you're afraid of, and you're stepping into those things that are scary or uncertain, or you're back in the maze, you know, like Ha was, and you're searching for different cheese, and you are in that vulnerable area, and then you overcome that. That stuff makes you feel so powerful. Yeah. Right. There was this but when I was in high school, I had zero game with any girls at all.
No way.
No, any girls at all, which is surprising. I know, because it's so, you know, so good looking. But I had zero game with any girls, you know. So I maybe went on a courage journey as well with the whole, you know, girl
I
scene.
know what that's like too.
Yeah, like actually asking girls out, or like making bold moves with their certain things, or doing cute things even though you don't know how a girl is going to respond. And I remember about I don't know how long this goes, maybe like 2 years ago or whatever, a year ago or whatever. I was at a wedding, right? And I went to go see my boss. He was the one DJing the wedding, but I knew the people he was DJing it for. So I went to this wedding, and I'm standing with him in the back, and I see this girl that's like hanging out, like, or whatever. And I had probably spoke like 2 words to her at the buffet or whatever. But for some reason, there was something in me like, I got to ask this girl out. Like I was just determined, you know, like I was like, this girl's pretty, like I'm down, like I gotta ask this girl out, right? So I'm like, I go back to Brian, who's my boss, and I'm like, bro, I think I gotta ask this girl out, you know? And he's like, which girl? And I'm like pointing out which girl it is, and he's like, do it, bro, do it. And so like it's one of those moments where you're like, you know that you're gonna do something, but you're in this like weird state, like, should I do it? Should I not do it? Should I do it? Right?
Yeah.
And I'm just pacing, like walking around, and I literally said to God, I was like, Lord, if she walks away from the group she's in right now, I was like, I will go up right now and I will do it, right? And no joke, I'm not even kidding you. She looks down at her phone and walks away from the group. And I'm just like, that exactly. That's my cue, right? So I'm like, okay, here we go, right? And there's nothing that does that to a guy, like go to see a, you know, do this to a girl or whatever. But I like walk up to her and I'm like, hey, you know, and she's like, hi, and I was like, I was just wondering if you like wanted to get coffee sometime. I'm sure what I said was not cool. I was just like nervous, but I did it anyway, right?
Yeah.
And she literally was like, my boyfriend's right there. And I was like, right? It was like, she was like, that's so sweet. Like, thanks for asking me, but my boyfriend's right there. And he literally like looked over at us and I was like, hey man. And I just booked it out, dude. And it was such a fail. But I got into my car after the wedding was over and I screamed and roared like a lion, right? Because I was just in my car, like, I am a man, right? I was so stoked, dude. Even though she said no, right?
Right.
It wasn't about that. It was about me stepping out of my comfort zone, doing something that I was afraid to do, totally flopped, totally failed, but that wasn't even the purpose. And I'm not saying God was like trying to matchmake me or like a matchmaker in heaven. I think he literally, you know, he answered my prayer in that moment. He's like, look how courageous, you know, like that inspired my heart. Like I was literally praising Jesus on the way just because.
Even though it didn't work out the way you wanted it to.
Exactly. But that was not the point. The point was was not that it would work out. You know, that would have been cool. But the point was overcoming something, right?
Overcoming the fear that was stopping you.
Exactly.
To do what you wanted to do.
Having courage. And again, that's something that courage does is it fills you with life. Like it fills you with vigor. You feel fully alive, you know?
Yeah.
When you can stand in the midst of fear, in the midst of pain and say no, right? And I'm going to make my own decisions. I'm saying no to you, fear. I'm actually going to believe that I'm going to be all right if I don't listen to this fear that has protected me all of my life, right?
Yeah, and it's like it fills you with more courage in the moment. Like once that happens, it's like at least for me, it feels like there's a switch that just takes place.
Right.
It's like now the fear doesn't even matter. I'm just going to do the thing.
Right.
Because I've already made that decision in my heart that fear is not going to be the thing that determines what I'm going to do right now.
Right.
And that, when you're talking, I was reminded that the word courage comes from the root word heart in Latin.
Cardio.
Well,
in Latin.
They probably has the same. Actually, they probably have the same root word.
Right.
But it means heart. Courage. It literally was just heart. Right. Like, oh, that guy has heart.
Right.
Which is like you're living from a place of fullness. You know, you're living out of your heart. You're not like Braveheart. You know, it's like What's that? I don't know. Something just crossed my mind.
Your heart is free. Have the courage to follow it.
Yes.
That's my favorite line from Braveheart.
That's it. That's
he's lying on the table next to his already dead dad. But that's one of the best scenes. But yeah, his father looks over him and he says, William, your heart is free. Have the courage to follow it.
Yeah.
And that's it right there. It's like your heart is actually, ooh, that's good.
You're just living fully from you, you know, from yourself. There's not these things that are plaguing your mind that are trying to deter you from being who you really feel like you are.
Right.
You know, it's like, and I find myself being more courageous when I feel like I am living from a place that is true to what I value.
Right.
Right. When I do center myself on what's important to me, when I remind myself of what matters most, it's easier for me to access that courage.
Right.
Because I know what's important to me, right? That question, what would I do if I wasn't afraid?
Right.
That is it's clarifying to me what matters to me most.
Right.
What matters most to me. Because
fear is like putting on a blindfold, you know? It clouds your vision as to what is actually true. Right. And that's the thing. And I think I've said it in another podcast, but like God kind of showed me, he was like, fear is not truth, you know, which seems like a simple statement, but he said it in a different way. Like you can't find any meaning in fear. You know what I mean? Like, or you can't form your identity out of fear. Like you can't make decisions. Like wisdom is not in fear, right?
Yeah.
There is no wisdom in fear, right? To a certain.
Well, there's a wisdom to be. I guess it depends on what you mean, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Right. Well, like,
you mean if you're just living out of fear, you're not going to be thinking.
You're not going to be
wisdom.
thinking clearly.
Right. You're not going to be thinking clearly.
Yeah, wisdom. I'm just saying. Oftentimes, like, say somebody doesn't go after their dreams, right? Or something like that. Like they want to be a basketball star. They hurt their ankle. I hate this. This is the worst thing ever. When people say like, oh, I guess God didn't want me to go to college and play basketball because he tore my Achilles tendon. I'm like, what? That is the worst. Okay.
Yeah.
What is God doing? He's like up there with like spiritual scissors, like chopping ACLs and MCLs. Yeah. But anyway, but like, okay, so you don't go after something because you just like think, oh, God's leading me into a path of wisdom, but really you're afraid of failure and like actually going to college and playing ball or something like that. You know what I'm saying? I think we mix together fear and wisdom and say that they're the same thing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So sometimes we won't.
I think so.
Right. We won't make decisions, or we won't go after things, or we won't step into freedom because we are afraid, and then we call that wisdom.
Right. We'll use wisdom as an excuse to stay in fear.
When
maybe there is wisdom to have levels of fear about things. Not in a paralyzing way.
Right.
But to have an acknowledgement that you could suffer or have pain.
Right.
Right. And that's okay to know that. But to call fear wisdom, I think would mess up a lot of decision making.
Right.
It would twist a lot of things. I think it's really easy to twist a situation or to twist a feeling if you're just going to call fear wisdom.
Right.
Wisdom, I think it does have a healthy view on fear. You know, it's okay to be afraid of that pit bull that's aggressive and attacked 4 people because you might get hurt. Right. But to then label fear as wisdom, I think is dangerous.
But do you even need fear to know don't mess with that pit bull?
No.
Right?
I guess not.
Like, couldn't you just say like, I'm not going to mess with that pit bull.
Right.
It could hurt me, but I'm not afraid of this thing.
Right. I'm just going to stay away from it.
Right. I'm just going to stay away from it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a different, I don't know. That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess not. I mean, yeah, you don't have to have that.
Or like, let's say you don't want to do something wrong because you're afraid of the punishment. Right? Do I really need fear to know what is right and wrong?
No.
Right? Like I could still have wisdom about what is right or what is wrong without the fear of the punishment.
Right.
Why is the fear of the punishment the reason that I'm choosing right in the first place?
Right.
Or why is the fear of the dog attacking me even the reason that I'm not? I don't know. Like that's
right. It doesn't need to include fear.
It doesn't need to include fear is what I'm saying. But yeah.
No, I think that's true.
Yeah. But despite that, like, yeah, not trying to find your identity or not trying to find, your source of wisdom. Let's say that your source of wisdom through fear, right? Obviously, fear keeps us away from certain things, and I guess it could be semi-good. I still have to think about that more, but yeah, to not step into those things, and I love that the courage comes from the heart. It invigorates your heart to stand in the midst of that. So, like, how would you do that in, say, like anxiety? Right? It's stepping into courage in the midst of your anxiety would be embracing your anxiety and not making choices from anxiety, right? Yeah. It's like, getting stressed and lashing out on somebody else. Courage, right, would say, actually, I'm going to stay really present because I know that whatever's going on inside of me is going to leak onto the people around me. And so I'm going to take the courage to make some different decisions, not out of that anxiety. So I don't lash out at my wife or at my kids or at my friends right now. I'm feeling anxious. I acknowledge that. I step into that anxiety. I'm going to make a different decision for my life.
Yeah. When you accept the situation, when you start accepting the pain or accept the uncertainty or the difficulty, then we can choose courage to respond from a different place.
Right.
Rather than trying to avoid the pain. Right. Because fear is wanting us to avoid the pain. I think fear fear in and of itself doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? It's not like we should necessarily try to avoid being afraid. But fear is not a thing that we need to have be our guide.
Right.
And so we can, whenever we allow that fear to be present, when we're like, okay, I'm afraid.
Right.
That's okay.
Right.
I'm going to do this.
Right.
Right. I'm afraid that this person's going to reject me. Well, I'm still going to do this thing because this is what I think is right.
Exactly.
So fear doesn't have to be something we try to avoid.
Yeah.
Because I think when we try to avoid it, it often makes it worse.
Right.
It's like the fear that I'm afraid of this happening, so I'm gonna go avoid this situation because I don't want to be in this situation.
And usually, whatever you resist becomes stronger inside of you. You know, if you're trying to constantly get away from fear, you're going to perpetuate a cycle of living in fear. And I don't know all the language about how that works. You know, I'd have to think about it more clearly. But I don't think it's about avoiding fear. It's about embracing courage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And I do think as well, though, as you continue embracing courage, you stop being afraid.
Yeah. I think there are less things scare you.
Exactly.
Because you've learned that it's not actually a scary situation with a lot of things. I think courage is most prominent in situations where there is a definite danger, right?
Right.
That's where an act of courage is most exemplified. When
an act of valor.
Yeah. Whenever there is an imminent danger, something bad will happen, but I'm going to do this.
Right.
Right. That's whenever like, whoa, that is courage.
Right.
But even in the little things where I'm not certain if something bad is going to happen, something bad could happen, I'm still going to do this thing.
Right.
That's still courage. In the little relationships where, I don't know, maybe if I forgive this person, then they're going to keep doing it.
Right.
You know? And we could be afraid of that happening.
Yeah.
Courage might look like forgiveness.
Right. Yeah.
Because the thing that I'm afraid of happening, whether or not I forgive them, it may not actually change the difference. It might not make a difference, but it takes courage for me to forgive them, so I'm going to forgive them.
They might not apologize, right?
Yeah, they might not even apologize.
Yeah. So it actually takes courage to forgive somebody because you actually are uncertain about how they might respond to that forgiveness or not even care that they got your forgiveness, right? And then that leaves you open, exposed. Yeah, it leaves you the ability for you to be rejected. Right?
Yeah.
So all of those things, you know, I mean, or if I let go of this bitterness, or I can't control how I feel towards that person, right? Because it's like bitterness, holding resentment or bitterness towards somebody is creating a wall so that they can't hurt you again, right? So it actually takes courage to let go of bitterness because you're basically inviting them back, you know what I mean, to do the same thing to you.
Yeah.
Right?
It takes courage to love somebody.
Right.
As well, because we don't know if they're gonna we don't know if they're gonna love us back, and you know, that's exemplified and to the extreme with Jesus,
right,
dying on the cross, saying, "Father, forgive them; they don't know what they're doing."
Right.
In the middle of him being tormented and murdered on the cross, right?
Yeah.
He was doing it because of the love that he had for people, regardless of who was going to see that and accept it as an act of love, and. So it could be, I don't know if they're going to love me back, but I'm going to do the loving thing. Right. Or in a case that I experienced last year was, I want them to feel so loved, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to love them well. And that's stopping me from doing the act of love that I wanted to do. Right. Right. So with my now wife, who we were dating back then, is actually just last year, Valentine's Day. I got a Valentine's Day card for Brittany, and I remember thinking, like, I really want her to know how much she means to me. I really want her to know how much I love her, and I know that words are a big deal to her. Right. I know that, you know, it's really important for her to, like, whenever she gets compliments that they're specific. It's not just like a general thing. Right. That it means a lot more when they are specific, right? And those things have a lot more weight and they make her feel valued and appreciated. So I knew that whatever I write in this card needs to be good. Right. Because I don't want to write something and it to be insufficient. You know, I don't want it to write something and it not convey how much I care about her or how important she is to me. Right. And so I bought the Valentine's Day card And I sat down with it and I didn't write anything because I was so afraid that whatever I put down wasn't going to be good enough. Wasn't going to be enough for her to see and read and feel loved.
Right.
I thought, what if she reads it and she's like, oh, that's nice.
Oh,
and I was like, and that thought stopped me from writing the card.
right.
And so I just put the card in my closet and I just left it there. I didn't touch it and look at it.
Right.
The months went on, and this past Valentine's Day, I found it because I was like, I think I still have that card from last year.
No way.
So I found it and I got it. And then something shifted from that year to this year. And that is, I know that it's going to take courage for me to love my wife well.
Right.
Because I am not going to do things perfectly.
Right.
I'm going to mess up sometimes. A lot of times,
Right.
I'm going to make bad decisions.
Right.
I'm going to do things that she doesn't appreciate.
Right.
Or I'm going to try to tell her how much I love and care about her and fail in my effort to explain it.
Right.
But I would rather live in a way that says, I love you, than in a way that says, I'm too scared to love you.
Right. Dang.
I want to live in a way that says, I love you and I might not do it right, but I'm going to do my best to love you.
Yeah.
Rather than I'm scared to love you because I love you so much, so I'm just not going to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And that shift had to take place in order for me to have the courage to write, right? I had to realize this is going to take courage for me to love her because I'm not going to do it perfectly.
Right.
And I might not do it the best that I even want to.
Right. Yeah.
I might not be able to love her the way that I want to love her. And that's going to take courage for me to step into.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it was a big shift from last year to this year, and something that I realized, it's okay for me to not love perfectly, but it takes courage to love at all.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it was just it was a big deal for me internally when I had realized I just had to let that idea go.
Yeah.
I just want to love her.
Yeah. That was beautiful. I'm crying.
Oh, thanks.
No, that's seriously beautiful. It's like you do love her. You're afraid maybe even that you do love her. It's like, oh my gosh, actually saying this out loud, it's very vulnerable to say.
Yeah.
It's very open to say. And what if I don't do it perfectly? And there's all of those questions, but again, coming back to that vigor of life, that fullness of life, it's, what's that saying? It's better to have loved and lost than have never to have loved at all. Uh-huh. But, that's just like a Hallmark version of it. But it's so much more full to take the courage to love somebody, or the courage to do what is right, or the courage to embrace pain in your life, or the courage to even choose joy, than to try and stay away from those things altogether, right? Because you're so afraid, and then you have a wonderful wife and a wonderful relationship with your wife because of that courage.
Right. Yeah.
And so if you didn't decide to do that and to step into that courage and to get vulnerable and to step into that place, you would be missing out on on one of the most beautiful things that God has given you in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that comes with, again, and we've talked about this in multiple episodes, the embracing that pain is just a promise, like failure, it's going to happen. You know what I mean? You're not going to do everything perfectly, and that's all right, and things are going to get messed up. And we make so many decisions out of fear of this happening, or the what ifs of what if this goes, or what if she takes it the wrong way, or what if she's like, well, whatever,
Right.
The unrequited love, that you could receive. But it's like, you're going to make it, and you're going to be alive. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to die, and even if you do, the beauty of the cross, the beauty of the gospel is that even if it does come down to like you literally die, you still don't die. Right? Yeah. It's like you have all of these certain, deaths that you could have, and you're going to live through all of those. I saw a cute little quote the other day that said, you've made it through 100% of your worst days. And I was like, I think I'm becoming like Abby. I'm like starting to be like, wow, you know, you know, like some of these, you know, more cheesy quotes or whatever. But that's crazy. Like you've made it through 100% of your worst days, and look, you're still here.
You're still here.
So it's like, so even if the love is unrequited, even if the girl says no, even if you know you still are struggling with anxiety or depression, guess what? At least you're making money moves. Come on. Like at least you're making decisions not out of fear, and at least you're stepping out, and at least like you're taking courage and taking heart and strengthening yourself. Yes. And those things are going to eventually work out, you know? And you know what? If it takes even, you know, Jesus, I love what he does. How much courage is it to be in a garden and he's basically crying blood, you know, because they're sweating blood because he's like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be beaten and crucified for these people. And he says, Father, if you can take this cup from me, but only not my will, your will be done. You know what I mean? And he steps, which is the most beautiful depiction, I think, of being fully human. Not just fully God, but fully human. Jesus was fully God and fully human. Of being fully human, of seeing the cross right before him and choosing it anyway. Yeah. He says, no one takes my life from me. I lay it down freely. So he saw the cross, he saw the pain, he saw the suffering, and he chose it anyway. Yeah. And that is a huge depiction to me of what it means to be fully human. You know what I mean? Yeah. To see the possible pain, or to see the yes, it's going to hurt. You know, there are going to be some problems. There is going to be some hurt, and then choosing that anyway.
The fullness of humanity.
The fullness. And in that, I think Jesus, when he's talking about, you know, even, you know, I've come to give you life and life abundantly. I've always seen that scripture as like, oh, that's just like all the happies, you know, and none of the crappies, you know? Yeah. But I think life abundant is the fullness of even that. You know what I mean? He lived in life abundant, right? He was probably the most life abundantness, right? Of all the abundance, right? And he suffered and he chose the cross. Right. So it's like a life abundant. I have to see that even through the lens of Jesus, of like, it's not just like, yay, you know, like all the time. It's choosing courage in the midst of like, I'm terrified, right? Yeah. Or this isn't going to pan out for me, or I'm afraid of the consequences or the punishment of this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I believe in it, because it's attached to my values, because I think it's who I am, because I think it's what God wants, because it's going to produce all of this fruit that I can see. And, you know, you fall on your face. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Don't take me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. Anybody don't break me down.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
really that's good. And I want to be a courageous person.
Me too.
You know?
Me too.
And that doesn't matter if I'm afraid or not afraid. I want to be courageous.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to choose a life where I think to myself, what would I do without fear? Yeah. You know, and then choose accordingly. You know, I like that word, accordingly. Accordingly, yeah. But yeah, I want to choose a life like that, and I hope everybody listening right now that you would too. That you would go on a year of courage, courage journey with Darryl and I, because there's always things, you know, always fears to face and to step into, to embrace and to overcome, and there's always room to grow. You know, and I want to be a person that's constantly growing and constantly choosing courage, and not just running away from fear, but embracing courage and starting to see through the eyes of courage at all of these things that maybe make me afraid, you know?
Yeah. Let's look at fear as opportunities to be courageous.
Exactly. And that's in everything, in family, in anxiety, in depression, in the insecurity that we've been talking about, in the shame, choosing courage in the midst of shame, choosing courage even though your brain is sending crazy amounts of cortisol all through your body, and you don't know what to do with it, and you don't know how to step up. Get up, you know, get back up, get back in the race. Like, keep choosing courage every little day. You don't need to have everything figured out or everything healed immediately, or you don't need to get rid of all your fears all in one fell swoop, you know? Yeah. But choose little acts of courage every single day. And I want to do that, and I know Darryl wants to do that, and we're going to step into that too. I haven't arrived, you know, but stepping into more and more courage, choosing every single day, and becoming a more invigorated, fully human person because of that.
And courage is always accessible to us.
Yeah.
Even if we've never used it before.
Yeah.
Courage is always accessible. So we are all people of courage.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. Courage is inside of you. You are a courageous man or woman, and you're incredible. We're so glad that you joined us on this episode of Your Brain on God. Make sure to follow us on iTunes podcast, on Spotify, on YouTube, Instagram, Your Brain on God. Shoot us a DM if you have any topics or anything like that you want to get to or you want us to talk about. Make sure that you message us on Instagram, Your Brain on God, or write in the comments of YouTube, or we would love to talk with you guys and stuff like that. But you guys are amazing. Step into courage.
Step into it.
Amen.
So
courageous. Good. Peace out. Your Brain on Goggies. Later.